Greetings, YouTuber. You have entered the world of electrified network gaming and streaming. And here is your host, all the way from the internet, Sly885.
Sup, YouTube? It's your boy, Sly885. Alright. Sup, YouTube? It's your boy, Sly885 here. So, it's unusual of me to upload a react to a video that came out the day before, but I'm doing that this time around. It's actually because it's Metroid related, as Metroid Dread is coming out in just a few days, actually. So let's check this out from Did You Know Gaming. It's a short one.
Did you know? There's a Japan-only Metroid game full of exclusive lore and had several of its story elements reused in Metroid Fusion, Zero Mission, Super Metroid, and even Metroid Prime 2? Well, kind of. Released a few months after the original Famicom Disk System game, Metroid Zebes Invasion Order was an interactive literary adaptation licensed by Nintendo and published by Futushaba in December 1986. It's sort of like a choose-your-own-adventure novel on steroids, where the reader, or more accurately the player, is constantly making choices and rolling dice, then flipping to specific pages to explore branching paths, a bit like Dungeons and Dragons. As such, this gamebook borrows many elements from tabletop RPGs, like having to use pencil and paper to keep track of Samus's health, missile count, and current location in Zebes' labyrinthian underworld.
Now with the fact that I could just play cards on my phone and, with animation throwdown, the quest for cards, and just the stuff that I could do on my phone or my computer, which automatically keeps track of that stuff. The idea of having to keep track of all this with pen and paper sounds like such a chore nowadays.
The first 3 quarters of the story follows the original Metroid pretty faithfully, but the final act strikes out and forges its own path, and interestingly, seems to foreshadow events that didn't happen in the mainline series until decades later. These days, buying the book and getting it translated into English would set you back about $2,000, but we're gonna save you the trouble, and at the end of this video, we'll even show you how to play it without spending a penny. Just like the original game, Space Pirates have obtained the capsule of Metroid embryos and taken it to Zebes for experimentation, with the goal of creating a dangerous bioweapon. Samus.
Just letting you know, he's actually the game footage they've been showing this whole time is Metroid Zero Mission, which was I guess like a remaster of the original Metroid, but on Game Boy Advance.
This is tasked with infiltrating Zebes, defeating the space pirates, and retrieving the capsule so the Federation can study it. The gameplay has Samus exploring room by room, fighting enemies, collecting new weapons and abilities, and backtracking to previous rooms so she can use those new abilities to access secret rooms and more upgrades. Zebes is made up of 3 areas connected by elevators: Brinstar, Norfair, and Torian, totaling 97 rooms, each represented by 1 page.
So yeah, that's how it was in the original Metroid. As I've explained in some other videos you may have seen of mine, my favorite Metroid game is Super Metroid, which may even be my favorite Super Nintendo game of all time, or at least among my favorites. In Super Metroid, Samus's ship lands on Crateria, so that's the top area. Then beneath Crateria is Brinstar, which takes up the majority of the planet. Beneath, there's a little hallway at the bottom right area of Brinstar that goes through Meridia, but you can later access the rest of Meridia if you have Power Bomb and Gravity Suit in that glass hallway thing. But even further down from Brinstar is Norfair, which is the lava area, the hot area. Going back up to Crateria again, there is a wrecked ship you can go in. But when you go all the way to the right of Crateria, which is past the wrecked ship, and then go down, you get into the hull of Meridia. Torian you don't get to until you beat all the major bosses, which you have access to a room of a golden statue of all the major bosses in Criteria. You go, it's kind of like the middle left of Criteria, and you go down, you end up in Torian, which I don't know why. When I first played the game, and this was even with my with a former friend of mine, who actually I might be talking to again soon. But anyway, we both saw the name of that last area where the mother brain is and thought it sounded so stupid, because I guess we kind of misread it. We played a lot of Warcraft 3 back then. This was back in the 2000s. And he just made a joke like, it's called Torn. And, you know, because there's Torns in Warcraft 3. I don't know, it's stupid, but it's like, yeah, can you imagine an area just called Torn? Like, that just sounds stupid. Oh, God, I think I'm now saying a dad joke now. But anyway, I actually thought it was Torrain. But yeah, then I saw it again when I beat Super Metroid again later. I was like, wait a minute, that's not how it's spelled. It is Torian. And yeah, damn it. Anyways, moving on.
And almost every room containing one enemy. To kill enemies, the player rolls a 6-sided die to determine if they kill an enemy or if it damages Samus. If it doesn't die on the first roll, is connected by elevators, Brinstar, Norfair, and Torian, totaling 97 rooms, each represented by one page, and almost every room containing one enemy. To kill enemies, the player rolls a 6-sided die to determine if they kill an enemy or if it damages Samus. If it doesn't die on the first roll, the player keeps rolling until either it or Samus are dead. Using missiles, or more powerful beam upgrades acquired throughout your adventure, gives you better dice rolling odds in combat, and eventually, the Various suit will double Samus's defenses, cutting damage in half. Later in your playthrough, you'll want to backtrack to the beginning to hunt for upgrades, and with a slew of new abilities, Samus makes quick work of enemy types that might have killed her just a few hours earlier. And she can use newly acquired upgrades like bombs to gain access to new areas. Zebes Invasion Order is incredibly difficult, but when Samus dies, she's at least sent back to the beginning of the area she died in with all of her upgrades still intact. The gamebook is surprisingly faithful to the video game, so much so that some Metroid speedrunning strats can be used with the book. Instead of backtracking room by room all the way across the map, sometimes it's easier just to die on purpose and get sent back to the start of an area, which is known as a death warp in speedrunning. Keeping track of Samus's health, missiles, and the map can grow tiresome, but the Metroid formula's conversion into a gamebook is really quite genius. Some decisions stand out.
Alright, talking about Metroid 1, the original Metroid on NES. Did you like that game? I don't. Now, my first experience with Metroid, it was back in the 90s with Metroid 2 Return of Samus. I played it on somebody's game. I guess I borrowed it and played it on my Game Boy, gave it back to whoever it was from. I didn't play that much of it, but I enjoyed it, even though I had limited play of it. My first real experience with Metroid was buying Super Metroid on the Super Nintendo, and I already was playing the original Super Smash Bros. On N64 at the time, so it was like 99. It's, you know, when it came out in 99. So sometime that year, maybe in 2000 or whatever year it was that I got the game, was Super Metroid. And that game's incredible. It's an incredible game. I would later play Metroid Zero Mission on Game Boy Advance. And Zero Mission was fun, although I kind of felt a little disappointed about how short the game was in comparison to Super Metroid. But looking back at it, I realized it was still a pretty awesome game, honestly. And my first experience with playing the original Metroid was, in fact, on Metroid Zero Mission, you actually can play the original Metroid in there. You actually can play the original NES Metroid in there. So that was my first experience playing it. I played it. I hated it. The reason why is because, I don't like how Samus starts out with some stupid little pea shooter that, like, goes as far as me to, like, the computer screen. Like, that's such a short range. I hated that. Also, I really did not like the how easy it was to get lost in that game. So many rooms looked identical. It was that vertical room with the platforms in the middle and the edges on the wall with the same floating enemies, same crawling enemies. So many rooms looked exactly like that. And there was no map system to tell you where you were. So as a result of that, I did not like the original Metroid. I don't think the game actually really aged that well. Maybe it would have been fascinating if that was the first Metroid I played, but that game came out, I think, it came out 1 or 2 years before I was even born. And my first introduction to video games wasn't actually the NES, or playing them, wasn't actually the NES, it was the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis. So, I don't know, I guess maybe because the first one I really played all the way through was Super Metroid, the original Metroid was a giant downgrade from it. I also was able to later play through all of Metroid 2, as I was able to eventually get that game on Game Boy a little after, I guess a few years after I got the Super Metroid. And, you know, I played Metroid 2 Return of Samus on the TV with my Super Game Boy. But, you know, one thing I want to point out that I thought was kind of funny is that, see, I played Super Mario Land 3 Wario Land in the 90s, as well as, of course, Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins. I played both those games a lot. Of course, I played the first Super Mario Land a lot. I played all three of them a lot. I didn't play them in backwards order. I actually did play them in forwards order. I played the first one, then the second one, then Wario Land. But, like, when I got into playing Metroid 2 all the way through, I noticed that a lot of the sound effects that are in Wario Land are the same sound effects from Metroid 2. Like, when you pause it, it sounds, the sound effect is identical. When your morph ball goes into the spider ball mode, there's a sound that sounds exactly like that in Wario Land when you, like, touch an enemy without killing them and you bounce them off or whatever. It's some weird stuff. I think there was some other sound. Oh yeah. The final boss, when you damage him, he makes the same sound that any of the enemy bosses make in Wario Land. Like, it's so weird that it has a lot of the same sound effects. But then again, they're both games are by Nintendo, and you know, at least back then, a lot of games borrowed sound from other games. Most particular if it's by the same company, so it makes sense. All right.
As particularly creative adaptations of the video game's
Back
core
to the Metroid
mechanics.
Zero Mission.
For example, sometimes you'll come across a room with a secret entrance to a hidden room. To access it, you'll need to flip. This conversion into a gamebook is really quite genius. Some decisions stand out as particularly creative adaptations of the video game's core mechanics. For example, sometimes you'll come across a room with a secret entrance to a hidden room. To access it, you'll need to flip to the page in the book that represents the hidden room, but the page itself is also hidden. You're told the page number, but with one digit missing, so you'll have to hunt through the book to find it. And you're usually well compensated when you do, with the secret rooms having some of the best items like missile expansions, energy tanks, and the screw attack. Up to this point, Zebes Invasion Order mirrors the Famicom Disk System title, but with a few notable differences. In the game, Zebes is a planet, but the gamebook refers to Zebes as an asteroid. A little extra lore was added as well, like how Mother Brain's been experimenting on Zebes' indigenous creatures and grafting cybernetic enhancements onto them. The book also expands on Ridley's abilities, giving him psychic abilities that accentuate the pain caused by his fire attacks. Creed and Ridley are also holding keystones that are required to unlock the path to Torian, which explains why Samus can't head straight to Mother Brain right from the start. After killing Mother Brain and retrieving the Metroid capsule, Samus climbs out an escape shaft and flies away in her spaceship. At this point, the game changes completely. You're no longer required to keep track of Samus' stats or location, and gameplay shifts into a more traditional choose-your-own-adventure format. The gamebook's story goes down its own path for the final act, adding some extra twists and turns, some of which made their way into future mainline installments.
Yeah, that's something that always sticks out to me on Metroid Zero Mission, is when you're in the Zero suit. It becomes more like you're playing a 2D side-scrolling version of Metal Gear Solid, where you're trying to actually stun enemies and trying to hide from them most of the time because you can't really do that much damage to them.
As Samus flees in her ship, she realizes one of the capsule's embryos broke out and developed into a gigantic, mutated Metroid. This new story element was presumably inspired by the end of the 1979 film Alien, where Ripley finds the xenomorph stowed away on her escape pod. Perhaps more interestingly, this was the first time Metroid fans ever got to see a mutated Metroid, and the same could be said for Samus' spaceship. Neither were in the original game, and both made their video game debut 5 years later in Metroid 2: Return of Samus. With the mutant Metroid bearing down on her, the player has two choices: send out a distress signal from the cockpit, or flee in an escape pod. Either way, she's eventually forced to dock in a giant ship belonging to the Space Pirates, in a situation very similar to the extra chapter added to Metroid Zero Mission. However, one major difference is that the gamebook's author depicted the Space Pirates as humans, since they weren't revealed as aliens until 8 years later in Super Metroid. The Space Pirates capture Samus, and their boss pulls off her helmet, revealing that, gasp, Samus is a woman! The pirates are all shocked it was actually a woman who destroyed their base on Zebes, and the pirate boss is even, quote, horrified by the revelation. What happens next branches off into 8 different endings. 6 of those endings
That suddenly got me thinking of something. See, back then in the 1980s, when this all was being released, yeah, it was more often considered a surprise that, like, the hero would be a woman. Nowadays, it's not so much a surprise, despite what Brie Larson, who plays Captain Marvel, wants you to think. She thinks she's like the first female role model, first female hero. I'm sorry, but Wonder Woman came out a few years before. Sorry. And at least Gal Gadot handled the role and handled the fame with grace instead of thinking she's on top of the world and being an ass about it. But even long before that, I mean, there was Sarah Connor in Terminator, and even, I mean, that's going way back. It's going back to like '84 or whatever. But even further back, Ripley in Alien. They mentioned her, Ripley in Alien, which came out in 1979. So, yeah, I mean, back then, even though there were already some female heroes, it was still considered a bit unexpected to see them. Nowadays, it's not really that unexpected. I mean, Black Widow now has her own movie, despite the fact that her character was killed off in Endgame. Oh, spoiler. Have you not seen Endgame? It's the highest grossing film of all time. The odds are, if you're watching this, you've seen Endgame. Of course, Black Widow... of course, the movie Black Widow takes place long before Endgame. So, duh. But anyway, I haven't seen Black Widow, but I've been curious about it. I've just never seen it. Anyway, the fact remains, back then it was more surprising for there to be female heroes, but nowadays it isn't so much a surprise. You know, it's considered a little more normal. There's more equality when it comes to who... there's more quality when it comes to who can be a hero nowadays, which is great. I think it's great. People still like to complain there isn't enough, but I think people should just be happy that there is more equality than there was. So this is why I brought this up. Being that Metroid takes place, you know, hundreds of years in the future, I was thinking that if it was revealed that the hero was a woman hundreds of years later, would that really actually come as such a big shock to people? I mean, times would have changed a lot by then. Would that have been such a big shock? Let me know in the comments below. See, it makes sense that it would be seen as such a shock back in the 80s, but if it's hundreds of years in the future, I don't know if it'd be that big a surprise.
Result in Samus getting killed by either the Metroid or at the hands of the Space Pirates. Of the two endings, helmet, revealing that, gasp, Samus is a woman! The pirates are all shocked it was actually a woman who destroyed their base on Zebes, and the pirate boss is even, quote, horrified by the revelation. What happens next branches off into 8 different endings. 6 of those endings result in Samus getting killed by either the Metroid or at the hands of the space pirates. Of the 2 endings where Samus survives, the bad ending occurs if you try to escape without risking your life to retrieve the capsule and complete your mission. If you make that mistake, you're treated to a conclusion very similar to the end of Metroid Fusion. Samus flees to the docking bay but gets intercepted by the mutant Metroid at the last second, and after she kills it in the equivalent of a final boss battle, she escapes in a small craft and fires a missile that destroys the pirate ship. But as Samus flies into the distance, the mutant Metroid can be seen latched onto her ship, implying she might die off screen soon after. In the good ending, Samus faces off against the pirate boss in a sword fight, culminating in the boss getting killed by Samus or defeated and left to get killed by the mutant. Either way, Samus takes the capsule and escapes on the small craft, fires a missile destroying the pirate ship, and flies off with the Metroid capsule. Mission complete. After it's all said and done, the player's treated to an epilogue where a meteorite lands on Earth, and although nothing's found at the impact crater, several human corpses are found nearby with the life drained from their bodies. It's implied that unbeknownst to the locals, the crashed object was actually the mutant Metroid, who developed a hateful obsession for Samus and came to Earth to hunt her down. A dark and foreboding cliffhanger for a sequel that never got made. Although, it's worth noting, the idea of a heavily mutated Metroid viewing Samus as its arch-nemesis and coming after her again and again later found its way into Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. Zebes Invasion Order features quite a few original plot lines that have influenced future games, but it's unclear if the developers took direct inspiration from the game book, or if all these similarities are just a coincidence. Zebes Invasion Order borrows story beats from the Alien movies, and the same can be said for the video games, so perhaps the parallels are simply the result of a shared inspiration. Regardless, it's interesting to see similar events play out in the book years or even decades before they happen in the games. Copies of Zebes Invasion Order have become increasingly rare and expensive over the past 35 years, to the point where it's hard to find a listing for one at any price. But one fan who was able to get his hands on a copy was Devin Monins, aided in no small part by the Game Preservation Society in Japan. Over the course of several years, Devin translated Zebes Invasion Order and converted it into a playable text adventure. It's now freely available on Metroid Database, so if you want to give it a try, we'll leave a link in this video's description. Devin even streamlined it so the game keeps track of Samus's health, missiles, and the map all on its own, so you don't have to resort to pencil and paper unless you're feeling like a purist. This is actually how we played the game, though the quality of life features were disabled to best replicate the authentic experience of playing the game book. Did you also know that a Metroid movie was being developed for years before being cancelled? For more on that, check out the video on screen. And if you wanted to hear about more Metroid from yours truly, I'm Wayne's Boss, and on my channel, October is Metroid Month, so click the other video on screen if you want to watch a full month of Metroid. Thanks for tuning in, folks. See you next time.
I think people would be getting plenty of a full month of Metroid by watching people stream Metroid Dread. But cool, man. That was awesome. And, you know, I would know that I have succeeded in life if I was narrating an episode of Did You Know Gaming. But that's wishful thinking. I only got 1,600 subscribers, so that's never going to happen. At least not likely. Not unless my channel gets big and it's got a lot more gaming stuff in the future. But, that said, that sure was a blast to watch. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching it with me. Like I said, it's unusual of me to upload a react to a video that came out yesterday, or, you know, the day before my react. But I was busy working, and I already had uploaded a react earlier that day, and I just didn't really have time. So just thought I would get this out there because it's Metroid related, and Metroid Dread is coming out very soon. Thank you so much for watching. That game, that book game, whatever, like that seems pretty interesting. It really does. It seems like a pretty interesting game. I like that that individual they mentioned towards the end had in fact streamlined it so it keeps track of your health and keeps track of all that stuff you need to know instead of you having to write everything down. I would rather play it that way, that's for sure. But what'd you think about that Japan-only game? Not a video game, just, you know, like, board game, book, interactive book, whatever. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. It's pretty interesting how there definitely were things that went on in that game that became mainstays in later Metroid video games. That is actually really interesting. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and click that bell icon to add me notifications. Have a good one. Oh yeah, and also, I'm hoping that my wife and I get to move into our own apartment soon, because if we do that, we will be happy because we hate where we live now. But also, I have planned, I'll be recording these at home instead of out and about. I'll be able to live stream more often at home, although I still have to work a lot of hours with DoorDash, because I'm going to be honest, I make only about $10 per month from monetization on YouTube now, while I make, on average, over $20 per hour working for DoorDash. So I think the choice is obvious if for my financial well-being. But I will try to make more. I will continue this channel, of course. I also do intend to try to upload some original stuff now that I'll be hopefully in our own place, if it happens. And even before that, there is an intention. I'm intending on doing a collab video with another YouTube channel. You'll find out who soon enough. I mean, those who have been really following closely actually know who I'm talking about, but most of you probably don't. And I'm not going to give it away because I want to be sure, because it has to be a sure thing. We want to do this collab. We do. We're both small channels, and we both want to help each other out. But things get in the way of our schedules, so we don't know for sure. But that's what we want to do. It's going to be a collab on a it's intended to be a collab on reviewing a movie that has come out. That's coming out this month, or in like a couple days, actually. Anyways, thank you so much.